It was an exciting first preseason game for a lot of reasons for Steelers fans. I'm Chris Carter, the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to break down all aspects of that right here on a bonus episode on this Sunday. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video. If you enjoyed, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content like this one right here. Couldn't go without doing a full episode about this first preseason game because this wasn't your typical first preseason game if you're a Steelers fan. For years, we've been accustomed in Pittsburgh to watching, maybe some excitement when the first team's out there, but once the second and third team offenses were out there, that offense would just be terrible. Whoever was your backup quarterbacks were just throwing errant passes. Landry Jones was fumbling snaps into the end zone and causing safeties all by himself. All of that was happening. It wasn't as much fun. But in this game, each quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, threw a touchdown on their first drive of the game. And to me, one big thing that I pull out of this game was that for a first test, this offense worked. No matter who was running it, there were opportunities there for them. A big question all season long is, could Matt Canada's offense work? Is he in over his head? Last year, the Steelers' offense wasn't that good. And was that about the play calling? And for years, we've heard about it being the play calling. And it was always the play caller's fault and the offensive coordinator's fault. But then when you see with these guys who can use their legs and they're a little bit younger, you see other things start to open up. You see Kenny Pickett take three rushes for 16 yards. You see Mitch Trubisky get 4 yards in a rush. You see these guys buying time to create more opportunities for their receivers downfield. And I think that if you're a Steelers fan, you have to come away from this game happy. By the way, the Steelers, they beat the Seattle Seahawks 32-25 in their first preseason game of the season. And in doing so, now, if you are on our YouTube channel, I did a short reaction from Acrisure Stadium on the Rotunda, breaking down my live thoughts there. But I wanted to come home, settle down, look back over things, and think things through, and then record a full show for you guys where you're getting my organized thoughts. The top people who impressed me in this game, no doubt, George Pickens. If you haven't been to training camp, if you did it, and if all the times me raving about George Pickens on this show weren't enough for you to see why everyone's so excited about this guy, I hope that you now understand after seeing what he did in this game. 3 catches, 5 targets for 43 yards and a touchdown. And if you remember my interview with Frisman Jackson at the end of the week for the Friday episode, you heard him talk about how humble George Pickens truly seems. And you look at this game, go back and look at those plays. First play, they come right to him. First down, no problem. There were a couple passes where they tried him and the Seahawks were ready for the route and they were fine. But on that touchdown pass from Mason Rudolph, and we'll get to Mason Rudolph in a bit because I want to address the whole quarterback situation and how Heinz Field, I did it. I said Heinz Field. That's my first mess up on camera. It's all right. I mean Acrisure Stadium. There's some people in the YouTube comment section that prefer it when I say Heinz Field. Anyways, you know my point here. There were fans at Acrisure Stadium who were actually booing Mason Rudolph. We'll get to that in a little bit here. But on the touchdown pass that Mason Rudolph had to George Pickens, it was perfect. Pickens beat his man off the line of scrimmage. Mason Rudolph threw a pinpoint perfect pass to the back pylon. And the quarterback actually did a good job covering it. He said, hey, that pass is going to have to literally be perfect for me to not make this play. And it literally was. But I tell you, what I was most impressed about George Pickens was how he reacted throughout the game. It wasn't just that he made big plays. If you were watching him, the Seattle Seahawks gave him several different looks. They were giving him press. They were giving him backed off coverage. They were giving him doubles, safety shadowing. There was a lot of different things there, and he looked comfortable in battling against all of it. I caught up with him in the locker room and asked him about that. Listen to his answer, because it's not just some throwaway answer. He studied the Seahawks before this game, was expecting one thing, got another, and still handled it. Here's George Pickens in the Steelers locker room after their win at Acrisure Stadium Saturday night.
It looked like they threw different variations of coverage at you all night, but it seemed like you weren't fazed by any of it. Is any of that a testament to the battles you've done at camp?
Yeah. It's really like Pete Carroll's defense is more like a cover 3, 1 hog zone, you know what I mean? So really bailing corners. They wasn't really a lot of press on the film, and then we got out here tonight, a lot of quarters, a lot of cover 2 and press. So that's just how football is. They can switch it up on you at any time, but no, it didn't affect me at all.
Was that?
So you heard that, right? First of all, it is typically been said around Steelers training camp that the Steelers don't study much film on their opponents. They focus on themselves. And that's how they come into this game. George Pickens just lets you know, this year at least, they did study their opponents. He was breaking down the film on what to expect from the Seahawks defense and how they were going to approach him, but then noted how they approached him completely different from how they've been approaching things. What does that tell you about his maturity? To know and call out immediately what was expected, but say, hey, yeah, they did these other things. That was impressive, but I still did my job. And you see how he's carrying himself, right? He's just kind of like, yeah, another day at the office. That's how we know he's going to be good. Because, man, you couldn't tell me, listen, like if I had a YouTube video, they got like 1 million hits on the internet, man, I'd be in here in sunglasses. I'd be losing my mind on here. George Pickens catches, lights it up in his NFL preseason debut after lighting it up for a month in practice, and everyone's swearing up and down that this guy's going to be the best receiver of this wide receiver class. And he's just like, meh. That's a good sign. And yes, he does have a checkered past. He's got into the fight with the dude in the game. You can Google George Pickens fight or YouTube search that and to see that for yourself. So there's things in his past. But right now, since he's been with the Steelers, this guy has done everything that's been asked of him and more to learn, to focus, to be part of the team, and to do his best. And man, is he doing that. And I was asking around a couple of different Steelers, I got a chance to talk to in the locker room, and everyone we asked, like, hey, when that ball was there, if you watch the game, it was really close because George Pickens, his toe tap was at the last millisecond that it could be to get his feet in on this one. And I was asking everybody, like, when did you know that he did? Did you feel like he definitely got it when the play first happened? And all of them were like, listen, we've seen him enough in practice to know that if it's in that situation, that guy's going to get that toe down. And they were right, because he did. George Pickens, if you didn't believe all the hype that I was giving him in camp, I hope you believe that the hype is real after that game. But let's talk about the quarterbacks. We'll do that in just a second here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, because the quarterback position is still very important and essential to what the Steelers are trying to do this season. It was a fun day to watch these quarterbacks perform. I'll give you my thoughts on that right after this. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. I had this fun discussion with Mark Caboli of The Athletic. Good man. We've had him on this show, by the way. Good friend. We've been friends for years. We talk about football. We talk about life. He talks about Cobra Kai a lot because that's his favorite TV show. I think it's okay. Anyways, back to the point. We were talking about all the quarterbacks' performances in the tunnel as we waited for the Steelers to show up to their locker room. And as we're sitting there, it's funny because we watched Kenny Pickett's final touchdown drive from the tunnel there. But we were going over and we were saying who we thought was the best. And Mark felt that Mason was the best. I felt that at that time, Mitch was the best and Kenny was second and Mason was third. But I also felt like Mason didn't have a bad day. He did have the most mistakes. And I think we both agreed to come to the conclusion, no matter what happened, you could say very positive things about all three of the quarterbacks in this game. Mitch Trubisky came out first drive, bang, 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 gets him down the field. There was a play where there was heat brought from because James Daniel missed a blitz on his side, and Mitch Trubisky spun out of it and was able to make a play off of that. Mitch Trubisky's touchdown was him realizing, oh, snap, I need to bail from this pocket a little bit here, buy some more time by rolling to my left, and hits Gunnar Olszewski in the end zone. I think Gunnar Olszewski had a really good day. 3 catches, 47 yards, led the Steelers in receiving yards, and had that touchdown reception. Really good stuff there. But I liked what I saw of Mitch Trubisky. He handled himself with poise. He seemed like he wasn't fazed at all by the moment. And he made plays, just as Kenny Pickett did. Now, I'd say about Mason Rudolph. First play, he comes in, gets. I want to point this out. Anyone who watches this channel knows that I am very indifferent on Mason Rudolph. When he does poorly, I point it out. When he does very well, I point it out. And it's funny, whenever I say something about Mason Rudolph on this show, if you go to my YouTube comment section, if I say something positive, I get the people who say, you can't say anything positive about him. He can't be the Steelers starting quarterback. And I'm like, I never said that he was. What if he has a bad day at training camp and I just point it out? And I don't say Mason stinks. I don't say this, that, and the third. I just say, hey, it was a bad day for Mason. And people say, oh, you just hate Mason. And I'm like, geez, guys, come on. What are we doing here? But you look at this game, 9 of 15, 93 passing yards, and a touch, 100.1 passer rating. He had a solid day. Now, I will say he started hot. That touchdown pass to George Pickens was a thing of beauty. And then it kind of cooled off after that. Didn't have as many, big play moments. Even had some key mistakes. Was at least an interception, maybe 2 that should have been caught by the defense, but they dropped them. I'll also say take these results very lightly because I think the Seattle Seahawks are in a really rough position. But you look at how these quarterbacks handle themselves, how composed they remain the entire time they were there. And when you look at Kenny Pickett, 13 of 50, 95 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, also ran 3 times for 16 yards. That's a good group. That's a great day for Kenny Pickett. What made Kenny Pickett's day great for me wasn't just the results. It was how he got to those results. Because each time when I saw him move, whether it was a bootleg to the right or a rollout to the left or just standing in the pocket, stepping up or using his feet or finding the right man, each time Kenny Pickett was processing. He was learning. That's what this Steelers team needs. They need him to process, to learn, to get better in this situation. But you saw him start to make smarter and smarter decisions. He's very much a gamer. Pat Narduzzi, the head football coach at the University of Pittsburgh, said he's a football player. Let me tell you how I have covered Pitt for 2 years now. I'll be covering it a third with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette starting up on Monday. And Pat Narduzzi loves to say he's a football player if he really likes you. That's his thing. But what he means by that is Kenny Pickett is a guy who will put himself on the line to make the play. He is a leader. He wants to lead. He is all about the game. But notice when Kenny Pickett was making these plays, when he was rolling out, his feet were set. His footwork was on point. He was accurate with most of his throws, if not all of his throws. In fact, he completed his first 10 passes, and his first incomplete pass came when he tried to hit the new receiver that's wearing number 21. I actually can't remember his name right now, but it was when he hit him, or I think it was Christian Blake. And he tried to hit him on a deep ball. He threw it on his back shoulder, and the receiver just looked at the other shoulder and didn't find the ball. I think Kenny Pickett is doing the very things that he did to climb up the Pitt roster's depth chart to be the quarterback when he got there, and that he's taking his time, he's earning respect, and he's learning the offense. And he's learning ways how to maximize his abilities within that offense. This is a very good sign to me because this shows that, hey, and for everyone who says, he's going up against the third stringers, Chris, that doesn't matter if he did well. Well, guess what? He was playing with third stringers as well. on a team that was already missing Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris. It's a lot of offensive players to be missing. So that means, and Benny Snell. So that means the third running back, Anthony McFarland, who also had a very good game, 7 carries, 56 yards. Offensive line, I thought, played very well, opening up holes for him and holes for the rest of the team. But again, I look across the board. I look at the quarterbacks. I look at the running back. This was a solid performance. And again, I'm looking at the don't just look at the numbers, look at how they got there. And when you look at how Kenny Pickett stayed composed, even in the roughest of moments, there was one play where he got sacked on 4th down. Also, go back and watch the replay of when he got sacked. If NFL Network or KDK, if you're here in Pittsburgh, whoever, if you T-voted or recorded it, T-vote, geez, I'm old. But go back and watch the play when he got sacked, not to see the sack itself, because it was just an unfortunate play. It was good positioning by the defender. He was ready for the bootleg and in position, and Kenny couldn't do much with it. But go watch Najee Harris react on the sideline, because when I saw the replay, Najee Harris saw Kenny Pickett get hit, and he looked like he was about to fight for him. And then he had to realize, oh, wait, this is just a game. This is just a game. But Najee Harris, and even in the locker room, like, I was waiting around for George Pickens to talk, and George Pickens' locker room is like right next to Najee Harris's in the Steelers locker room, and we're waiting, and Najee's like, "Oh, y'all don't want to hear me? I'm gonna talk all that ish." And only he didn't say ish, but he was so happy for his teammates, and I think that was also really cool. But again, Kenny Pickett, what I saw him at Pitt, how he climbed, he made the tough plays like he did in this game. He ran when he needed to run. He made the tough reads. He tried to stay consistent and stay within his game, not to try to do too much outside of his game, and that's good. But you're going to need to see more from him moving soon. You're going to need to see from him that he can rotate through coverages, rotate through options more consistently. We're going to need to see if he can repeat a performance like this, because if he does this again, then everyone's going to be starting to talk about it a little bit more. Right now, he's more so like, hey, good job, rookie. We'll see how you do. When the games get real, and that's very plausible. I don't think that anyone should overreact to this game. But I do think that those who thought that Kenny Pickett wasn't ready for the big time, or wasn't ready to get to preseason, he wasn't ready to, he was looking bad at the beginning of camp, and those who thought he hadn't improved, well, I'd say he at least delayed your calls, because he played that well. And again, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, also fine jobs. Again, I'll say the biggest problem that Mason Rudolph runs into is when he's when a team takes away his first read and his second read, he doesn't have the patience or the wherewithal to make it a not as much of a big deal when someone takes away those reads. And you saw that with the pick. It should have been a pick. He threw it right to the defender and they dropped it. You saw that with that decision. And I think that could be the biggest knock on Mason that gets him in trouble this year when you're starting to look at things. But again, you look at this Steelers night, offensively, I thought this was very good. I thought Dan Moore Jr., the one time that he gave up pressure where Mason Rudolph did get sacked and fumbled, I felt like that was more so on Mason. He should have felt that and stepped up a little bit, because it wasn't like Dan Moore Jr. wasn't between his man and Mason on that play. I feel like that was something he should have just felt out. But neither here nor there. I thought the offensive line held up their end of the bargain. James Daniels, I felt like missed a key block and still hasn't looked like the stalwart leader that I thought that he would look like going into camp. So I'm a little concerned there. I'll also say I thought Kendrick Green played better. He played better next to Dan Moore Jr. I'll also say, when looking at this offense as a whole, James Daniels, like I said, he needs to get better. Jakumo Okorafor laid somebody out on the Mitch Trubisky touchdown pass. If someone tried to get high and he just threw him down. It was really kind of satisfying to watch. Also, George Pickens threw some nasty blocks. That was fun to watch. But the bottom line is you see that there's some legitimacy to the Matt Canada concepts when the quarterback can move a little bit and force the defense to stretch the field and force the defense to have to cover deep and worry about the run. Those are things that just give natural elements to the offense that the Steelers just didn't have last year or even really the past like year and a half to 2 years. Or 3 years, because before Ben came back, he still had to do with Devlin Hodges and a young Mason Rudolph. But all in all, this team had very good showings. The offensive line made plays. Anthony McFarland, 7 carries for 56 yards. Great night for him. Jaylen Warren, though, 6 carries for 34 yards. I feel like everyone who didn't see Jaylen Warren in training camp was like, who is this guy? He's awesome. I wish I knew him. You would if you've been paying attention. 6 carries, 34 yards. Also caught 4 of 5 targets for 30 yards and caught a touchdown pass. What more can you say about Jaylen Warren and what he's doing right now? He's earning a chance to be the number 2 running back on the Steelers. Got ways more to go, but he's certainly taking the right steps. When we come back, I want to talk more about the guys that didn't show up too well, because I've glowed positively about Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, all these other guys. There's a few guys that we got to point to, and I'll get to my criticism of them in this game. We'll talk about that on the Locked On Steelers podcast with me, Chris Carter, right after this. All right, back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get to the players that I think needed the most improvement in this game. A1 is Devin Bush. Y'all know I have been very patient with Devin Bush. I have advocated for people to be patient with Devin Bush because of his injury and him coming back. This game looked just like a lot of them games last year where he was lost in the clouds. Now, granted, this is just the first preseason game. He could totally bounce back from it. But, man, there was a 16-yard run where the running back had to cut back right into his lane, and he just froze, didn't make a play. It's that kind of stuff that if Devin Bush can't make those type of tackles in space, he's going to not be back. And the Steelers might have to go get another inside linebacker soon. But again, early preseason, he's getting the jitters off, I'm sure. But be on the lookout for how that situation may play out. Because I don't think that Devin Bush did a very good job at all in this game. But to be fair, I don't think the defensive line did much of a good job either, for the most part. Granted, no Ogunjobi, no Hayward, no Highsmith, no Watt, no Alualu. Literally, like if you were to pick a starting 5 to be the edges and the 3 interior defensive linemen, those be your guys, and none of them are available. But I think other guys that you're a little concerned with, Henry Mondo, wasn't stuffing the run, was getting bullied off the line. As much as he is a cool story to keep around, you need run defenders in this situation. And I felt like Isaiah Loudermilk had some reps where I thought he was the lone guy to break what was going on, but nope. It wasn't enough. So I do think that there's going to be some serious intrigue to how this first team defense plays against the run, because they started to get bullied in that second half, and it did not look good at all. But again, there's certain things we can nitpick at. I felt James Daniels could have had a better day. Looking at those guys and seeing that. But here's the thing. I also felt like there weren't too many people that were, people that didn't have their best days, or at least didn't get exposed too much. But you look at James Daniels, look at Devin Bush, and right now those are 2 guys that need to step up and be better. because Daniels was brought in to fix the offensive line and be the captain of it. Devin Bush is still the highest paid draft pick, or excuse me, highest selected draft pick by the Steelers since Plaxico Burress, because they traded up to get him. They got to make these guys work. I'm intrigued to see how Devin Bush takes steps forward next week, if he does. But he needs to take steps forward. Going back through the tape a little bit, and these have only been live cuts, I will say I felt better about the offensive line as a whole. Live, I felt like the offensive line was okay, but I did feel better about the offensive line as a whole. Watching it on replay a little bit, I still have to study these things a lot closer. But all in all, I thought the Steelers, this was as good as a start as you could hope for. Trey Norwood also, it's for me an unsung hero in this game. 3 tackles, 2 breakups, 1 run stuff. One of those breakups was in the end zone. I said it all along. I was saying all I can. This team is talented. It's deep. I think the wide receiver room you saw with Gunnar Olszewski, Miles Boykin made a really nice catch away from his body. There's going to be some tough receiver questions the Steelers are going to have to find answers for at some point. We'll see how that plays out very soon here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's like 3 a.m. as I'm recording this, so I'm going to try and take my butt to bed. But I hope that you enjoyed this sort of bonus episode as I'm kind of sputtering on fumes here. Don't worry, there will be a Monday episode where I break things down even more, get some more time to kind of relax and get you guys more interviews. Plus, I want to get back to and talk about Kenny Pickett a little bit more tomorrow with some of the interviews that we got from him in the locker room. But we'll do all that on the Monday episode. Again, I'm Chris Carter. Thanks again for checking us out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. We'll have a great Sunday. I'll be back on your screens and in your ears Monday.